Hello, my name's Anna Hawkins. I am a qualitative researcher and I'm following on from Rob's introduction section to research approaches in geography by focusing on some terminology, some approaches and some ideas that would maybe be more associated with qualitative research, though not exclusively. So for the quantitative researchers amongst you, carry on watching, it's worth it. So Rob's talked to you about positivist approaches, and in challenge to that, a set of ideas emerged in the 1990s called critical realism. And critical realism really evolved as a way of challenging some of the underlying assumptions of the positivist approach, mainly that reality is fixed and measurable, and that it remains fixed and measurable, and that it's possible to develop a set of methods that would make that fixed reality safely observable and measurable using that same methods again and again without any deviation. What critical realism says is that the nature of reality is actually a bit more complex than that. It's more fluid than that, and the processes of observation, of categorization, of measurement, and of analysis are really flavored by the complexity and the inconsistency of humans, because we tend to be the research agents. So researchers will be biased, they will see things differently, they will design research in ways that leans towards their own worldview and that kind of thing. So critical realism was there to say, actually, reality is more complicated, and the ways in which we engage in research need to be a bit more nuanced and need to take into consideration the fact that there isn't just simply an observable truth out there that we can get to using a fixed set of methods that are safe and beyond reproach. So it's really about interrogating the lack of consistency of the human condition when it engages in research, even if critical realism kind of accepts that out there is a set of truths to be discovered, but the methods for engaging with them and the methods that we could use as people to observe those truths are always going to be flawed. So we're getting to some big ideas here, and I'm going to talk to you now about the term ontology. So ontology is the study of the nature of reality. Take a little sip of tea at that point. The study of the nature of reality is a big one. So this is really taking for granted the idea that reality is more complicated than just existing out there as a fixed form to be discovered, and that everything that we see and perceive is the same regardless of which set of eyes are perceiving it. So the cartoon that I've used to illustrate this here, you have two people standing at either end of this image, which they're perceiving as a three-dimensional object on the floor. And one is saying there are 3 bars, and the other person is saying, no, there are 4 bars. Now, obviously, this is an optical illusion, but the outcome of it is that both people are correct. There are both 3 and 4 bars on the floor, depending upon your perspective. And that throws open the door, really, to these big questions of ontology and the nature of reality. So is reality fixed and discoverable? Can you go out there and measure it and observe it and in a way that is reliable? Or if we are only ever engaging with whatever reality is through our own perfect lens as a human being, through our perceptions, through our standpoints, through our biases, then how can we be so sure, in fact, that there is something out there that is correct? So are one of the, are there 4 bars or are there 3 bars or are there both? And if we can say there are both, then we're blowing open this idea that there is one single fixed reality to be observed. Why should you care about this? Why should you engage with this? Well, for one, it's cool to know what the word ontology means. For another, your understanding of the nature of reality will influence and shape the way that you design research and the way that you carry out research and the way that you interpret your research findings. So if you can place your particular research design within the framework of different types of ontological perspective, then that is evidence that you are really engaging with the research design process at a deeper level. And for that, you will be rewarded in terms of higher marks. So from a purely materialistic approach, then it's worth doing that. It is really showing that your engagement research philosophy is robust. Although I've said that some of the things I'm talking about are more associated with qualitative research, it's really important to sort of just flag up that that's not always the case. And in fact, a quantitative researcher will design better research methods, and if they can engage with these philosophical ideas around ontology, it will make them interrogate their design process in a more robust way. And a branch of natural science that I think engages frequently with complex ideas of ontology will be something like quantum physics. Now, quantum physics, dealing in the quantum realm, if you've seen Ant-Man, you'll know a bit more about the quantum realm, but it's essentially really beyond observation. It's based upon theoretical modeling and calculations, and there isn't really any way of confirming that quantum physics is correct based upon observation. So they have to use different methods, and it throws open this whole idea about how fixed any idea of the nature of reality is. So the next cool term to deal with is epistemology. So if ontology is the study of the nature of reality, then epistemology is the study of the ways in which knowledge is created and different ideas about how knowledge is created. So a positivist approach here would say that knowledge is created through observing, measuring, engaging with natural phenomena, understanding their properties, so what they look like, how big they are, where they exist, and all that kind of thing. And if you can design a robust scientific method, then you can produce consistent results. And that is the way in which we come to understand the world around us. In challenge to that will be an example, is a couple of examples that I've picked. So there's positivism, and then there's lots of other things. So an alternative approach would be a constructivist approach. And really that would say that rather than reality and knowledge being out there, they exist very much in here. So we generate our own understanding about something through our own internal mental processes of engaging with a subject. So we don't know what we know until we've thought those processes through and engaged with something conceptually. Another alternative will be phenomenology, which is kind of similar to the above one as well, but it says that rather than just forming knowledge in our brains as we engage with a subject, that we form knowledge when we actually experience something or do something. So you wouldn't be able to accurately tell me what a walk in the Peak District was like unless you had been on a walk in the Peak District. So unless you had done that and had that experience, that phenomena, then you wouldn't actually be able to have any robust knowledge about what it was like. You could know what somebody else's experience of a walk in the Peak District was like based upon their explanation, but you wouldn't know. That knowledge wouldn't exist within you unless you had actually done it. So again, that slightly blows open this idea that there is one truth out there. There isn't a walk in the Peak District that you can go and observe and measure and say that is what it is like. The phenomena will be different for everyone that engaged within it, and not until you have done the thing, you actually don't know what it's like, and you haven't formed that knowledge. So epistemological approaches and positions are really important in terms of your choice of methods and the way that you design your research. So I'm going to give you an example of social constructionism as a way in which you might use a philosophy to shape your research design. So if you take the social constructionist approach to knowledge formation, then you would believe that knowledge is actually socially constructed. So there isn't, in this example I've used here, warning reflections in this mirror may be distorted by socially constructed ideas of beauty. So if I were to say, what is beauty? What is beautiful? What does a beautiful person look like? Then the way in which we as a society find value in terms of beauty and aesthetics is very socially constructed. It changes. It isn't the same now as it was 50 years ago. It isn't the same here as it is somewhere else. So often these ideas of what, in this example, beauty or popularity or are shifting constantly in terms of different socially constructed views. And if you were engaging with this idea of social constructionism in terms of your research design, then if you believe that knowledge is socially constructed, then you would need to think about how your research design is going to either create the conditions of social construction. So would you maybe use a focus group to examine the difference between, you know, what a group of people together come up with as some answers to some research questions versus individuals on their own? Or how would you try and capture that social process in your research design? So when we're talking about things outside of positivism, we stop talking about knowledge being discovered, because we've stopped thinking that there is one knowledge out there to be discovered. There isn't a truth. We start talking about knowledge being produced. So there are different ways in which people's beliefs and ideas and answers to research questions will be produced or constructed, depending upon the research setting. So if I ask somebody in an interview, a question in an interview, they will answer in one way. If I ask that person a question in a survey, they might answer a different way. And if I were to put that question to a group of people, they may come up with a different answer. So really, if you engage with these different philosophies, then you would think about how your research methods would likely produce different forms of knowledge. So before I end my little mind-blowing wander through research philosophy, two final terms, materialism and idealism. So materialism believes that matter is prime, and so it's matter over mind. So a physical realm exists, and our perception of it may be shaped by our individual perceptions, but it is nevertheless something out there exists and is fixed. And idealism, as the opposing position to that, would say that it's actually mind over matter, and we have no idea about how different people perceive reality, and therefore, as everyone's perceptions of something are different, and there is no fixed reality in the physical realm at all. Although these two things are presented as like these binaries, these opposing polarized views, we may take a position that's more closer towards materialism at some points, and something that's closer to idealism at other points. So social constructionism, for example, would probably be further towards the idealist end of the spectrum, because it's saying that the idea, let's say, of beauty is actually not based in the material world. It's not fixed. It's actually more to do with the ways in which different people perceive things at different points in time, different cultural contexts, that kind of thing. Whereas if you were carrying out more positivist research in sort of natural sciences and earth sciences, and you're going out and measuring observable features of the landscape, then you'll be placing yourself more towards the materialist end of that spectrum. So some big ideas there. I hope I have not put you off engaging with them a little bit more, and I'm going to hand you back to Rob now.